What's up, everyone? I'm gonna make another little video, maybe a little bit different than my previous ones. Move that up a little bit. On the middle of BFE, dirt roads. But I left that guy's house that I purchased some some hats from yesterday, right? Bought the rest of them, and come to find out, I can get first dibs on another house, right? This one happens to come with, he said 8 acres potentially. There's 40 acres out there. But it's a pretty sweet little setup with some outbuildings and stuff. And so last probably 10 or 15 minutes or so, I've been just kind of thinking and pondering on just kind of what's happening and stuff, right? And it's interesting how things work out, I guess, when you get super clear on what you're trying to accomplish. And it's really weird because this really kind of revolves around the whole failure thing, right? I've been on a journey for a very long time. I'm 35 years old. Buying and reselling cannabis, landscape, hardscape is all I know. If anyone that knows me personally, you know that's all I know. That's all I've post about, in a sense. When I graduated high school, I wrote an English report on cannabis, right? I've been doing the landscape, hardscape, the trifecta for a very long time. But after, probably the last, 8-9 years or so, there was a pretty decent failure from the cannabis side of things. I'm a dreamer, and I push shit far as fuck, in the sense, and I don't think people really understand really what it takes. When you're passionate about something and pursuing it, to the very end, essentially maxing shit out, right? Living on the edge of things, reckless in a sense. And from a personal standpoint, not having the structure, a lot of the shit, how I grew up, and key figures that, were essential, that were absent in a sense. A lot of things I'd blame shit on. Looking back, connecting dots is very easy. When all this shit was happening, it didn't really make sense. So this journey's taken a lot longer, in my mind at least, than I feel it should have. But it's all really starting to make sense now that it's all just really freaking perfect timing. I don't think a lot of people really understand quite what I do. I am kind of, I keep a lot of shit to myself. I was timid in the sense of kind of, what I do, or this, that, and the other, some interpretations of what I do. I think a lot of people think I sell dope, sell weed. People can think whatever the fuck they want, right? And this is something that took me a minute to realize. The last year or so, I got fired from Gates, really, and I fell back on buying and reselling again. And a lady gave me an opportunity with these robots and shit, and made a little bit of money and just kind of dove into it. Kind of got consistent with it, built on that. Started getting into some of the clothes stuff, built on that, and ended up locking neighbor to neighbor in Berrien Springs. They're one of the oldest, I think, thrift stores in the Michigan area. From what I understand, they've been around like the early 1900s. They're linked up with Andrews University. They get all their donation stuff, and a lot of special things happen there. But there was something that was happening, and I was realizing also on the outside, I was building ads and leads and funnels, generating shit, picking, and the same thing that happened with the motorcycle business that I had, if anyone followed any of that, you know, I went from my backyard to a 20 by 20 building to a 40 by 40, you know, building with 20-foot ceilings in a matter of like 2.5 months. You know, I ended up quitting a job where I was making $50,000 a year. I was landscape design and sales for a multi-million-dollar landscape company, one of the largest landscape companies here in Michigan, essentially. And gravy ass job, learning badass shit about design. You know, I'm very creative, and so it was very interesting. It was a dream job for a lot of people, but we butted heads on a lot of things in the scaling aspects. Me and the GM that were there were against kind of the old style of the boss and how they were wanting to do stuff. And you know, we had a badass plan. We had you know, paid mentors and stuff by one of the largest landscape companies in the world. You know, Caterpillar actually consulted with this company. They were so efficient with their overhead, and so we butted heads on a lot of shit. But it was something badass happened out of that. They had a bunch of landscape equipment. If anyone saw any of this, they went sold. I ended up selling it. Made like $8,000 in a matter of a few hours, right? And took that, went to the motorcycle business, flipped that matter of a few months. I'd have to look at my timelines and shit, and start getting into too much stuff too quick. Start parting stuff out, building relationships with people around the world to buy stuff. Start buying a shit ton of stuff out of the bike store that closed in South Bend. I mean, buying places out, right? Going everywhere. Too big, too quick. Some shit happened where a guy, I've never, you know, really looked up to anyone, but there was a guy close who I let get close to me. I had a relationship with that ultimately ended up murdering his wife, right? And so, you know, keeping the long story short, essentially, these guys were, no one's essentially been caught. Someone shot this lady or whatever. This dude's in jail for the murder, but there were some dudes fucking creeping my shop, right? And so I wouldn't go up there, you know, without the pistol, and for sure without you know, AR-15 or something, right? I ain't trying to fuck around. I don't fuck around. And what ended up happening there, I kind of went through another phase. You know, there's a shit ton of failure. We can dive into some longer story. There's a bunch of it, right? And so I ended up essentially giving that place up. That place was full of old motorcycles, tools, everything. I have a bunch of old pictures. Over $700 in rent, which I could have easily made. I wasn't in the right mindset, right? And so ended up losing that, going back to Gates, and started selling the cars. But I wasn't really happy. The buying and reselling, you know, cannabis rubbed me the wrong way. After, you know, another long story we can get into, which I kind of briefly explained. But it just, the passion wasn't there. But all three of that stuff, landscaping even in a sense, like it's riding a bike. Like it's one of those things fucking it's hard to walk away from. But the buying and reselling has been something that's always kind of been in me, in the sense that, you know, I've been around it my entire life. My blood grandpa has always kind of done it. You know, I went with my mom, got memories very, very young around it. I had a step grandpa when my parents divorced in Georgia, very briefly, that we remained there before we moved up here, that was very successful buying and reselling. He was a multi-millionaire off of this. And there was a very distinct moment that I remember when he gave my dad and the lady he's married to and us $100 to go to a yard sale and buy some stuff that he could in turn flip at the flea market. And so this had to been in like 97, 98. And so in that sense, you know, it's always kind of been ingrained. And so, you know, progressing through everything, you know, when I graduated high school, I ended up moving down to Florida. I was buying and reselling some bikes off this government website called Property Room. You could buy them in bulk. They're cheap as hell at the time. And we lived, you know, fairly close to the ocean, Wilbur by the Sea, which is, you know, real close to Daytona Beach. And so I was selling them. Bikes at this time, it's hard to believe. They were like 15 bucks for a lot of like 20 bikes. They were seized bikes. It's propertyroom.com. And dicking around with the landscape stuff. I don't remember all my time in this story. Ended up moving back up to Ohio, and I was staying with a buddy at the time, Matt Pritchard, motocross buddy, and I'd made a couple ads on Craigslist at the time. It was new. This had to have been in like maybe 2006, 2007, 2008, and we were I had the, you know, the business name that we called ourselves were Small Moves, right? And so we were doing little cleanups, clean up tiles and shingles for people, trying to move around small shit in their house, you know, that old people couldn't do, generating the leads, right? And so making the sales. So fast forwarding everything kind of together in the sense, it's always kind of been, I've had a huge realization after joining the group, you know, investing, you know, 4 figures essentially. And there's been a lot of stuff that's been apparent. You know, one of them, there's a guy I often share all the time, Stu, and I came across him when we were in the trailer in Marcellus after losing the house in Bertrand here. And this guy kind of stuck with me because he's a little rough around the edges. And that was kind of me. He had a badass kind of story, kind of relate to. Kind of black sheepish in a sense, doing, you know, something kind of unique, unheard of in the sense. You know, the Facebook stuff at the time really wasn't big at all. I think a lot of people kind of portrayed him from a coaching standpoint, which he was in a sense, but he was generating leads and sales and using social media. And so he kind of helped, you know, pivot a lot of shit in a sense, but I would never commit really. And so fast forwarding a bunch of shit, you know, everything happening last year, really kind of diving into the fuck's going on, looking at the man in the mirror, you know, holding myself accountable in the sense, looking at some issues, you know, that I needed to address at home, I need to address with myself, I need to address with my family, right, my relationships, friends, and but most importantly, there was a lot of kind of self-awareness stuff, I think, from a standpoint of kind of what's possible. A lot of like little big stuff started happening, you know, especially from like the resale stuff from the end of the year with neighbor to neighbor, right? I ended up, they were asking me to come in there and kind of start teaching some stuff. And at the time, my mindset really wasn't there. I was carrying a lot of baggage and burden shit from this failure and kind of let down and just really bullshit, you know, just fake fucking bullshit, failure excuses. Everyone, you know, has their own shit in a sense, right? Kind of thinking poor me in the sense, right? Having kids kind of changed that, which another long subject, you know, taking me a minute to kind of figure that shit out, right? But time, you know, going back to the story, neighbor to neighbor, you know, I was digging, you know, searching. I had first dibs on anything there, right? As soon as it got donated. A lot of their demographic and who they sell to isn't who buys a lot of what I look for. And what happened was they were throwing this shit away. They found me in the dumpster. I was picking trash, right? Their trash. And the guy had given me permission to kind of find out. The head boss, the head lady, said, I should have talked to her. I stuck to my gun. She said, okay. Ended up being able to look at some shit. And so what ended up happening was burnout and losing the place at the motorcycle shop was kind of the same thing that was kind of happening here, right? Finding out everything and kind of generating the lead and all of this stuff is really actually easy for me. It's probably the easiest part of all of this. And so is really the sales. I don't spend a lot of time from sales standpoint. I know a lot of people don't really believe that. I'm very efficient when I focus on my sales, but I spend a lot of time doing a lot of like Mickey Mouse shit. Like, you don't really understand all of the working parts. It's a kind of a unique in the sense of trying to scale all of this and facilitate kind of the processes and stuff with what to do. You know, like Neighbor wasn't the only place. I had places in Coloma. I had places, it was getting out of hand. My house started turning into a crazy hoarder's house. And I've got a bedroom full of shit right now, right? Of clothes, mainly right now. And I've got back pop-up buildings full of shit. And so I was not going to start repeating and creating these same problems. And so I was struggling hard, right? So I'm joining fucking Apex, really trying to get around more of the fucking the shakers, right? The fucking makers, the ones who are doing the shit. And I needed to get my mind right to kind of understand where I was at. You know, I'm timid in the sense. I'm always the student, I'm never the teacher, right? And through you know, a lot of processes, there's a bunch of fucking shit that's going on behind the scenes that I won't necessarily speak on until everything kind of goes through, right? Let's just put it that way. Know for a fact I'll be in Dallas next Wednesday though, for a few days. And there's I've got some big goals and aspirations for this, right? I don't think people really understand getting very, very, very clear on some stuff that you've been grinding on essentially for what seems like forever, right? You know, lived with immense amounts of failure. You know, I've got 2 sons. Lindsay, Colton is nonverbal, so there's some awesome, you know, challenges, you know, that were challenges kind of at the sense that are kind of really blessings, right? And so tying a lot of the crazy stuff kind of together right now on the resale side. You know, people kind of think I'm shooting for like $1 million right now as like a kind of a goal, and that shit's kind of easy right now with this plan, but it's way big. I'm trying to join the Billionaire Boys Club, right? And I'm saying this so I have a timestamp, you know, to come back and look at something, because there's some juicy shit going on right now. But finding this 7th house in my market where I'm not even really trying right now, is really kind of like one of my better aha moments. I tend to when I focus on something, really get what I want, and that's a lot of times what's kind of landed me into a failure, you know, those type of situations. And so having the plan and the clarity now where stuff is kind of paying off, and I'm, you know, I don't even have my official business up and going yet. You know, there's so much other bullshit that I had to work on and like kind of fine tune. And, you know, I realized I had 2,500 customers that I've done business with through PayPal. And so just getting a lot of that type of stuff kind of facilitated, right? Like the processes for doing stuff, because trying to get to this next level, you know, what I'm trying to accomplish is going to be a little bit different, and it's got some awesome opportunities, challenges. Some people look at them that from some previous shit, I was able to kind of see beforehand, pause the brakes, really has kind of allowed me to get to where I'm at right now. And so tying everything together like 3 months ago, I could have never envisioned getting into the real estate side of things. I had a big problem. I was finding homes and I could get this shit out of them. I could get them for next to nothing. I could get it for free. And dudes would have these homes for sale, and there's people always posting like all this wholesaling, all this other stuff. And it just wasn't the clicking, like it wasn't a priority type of thing. And so it was one of the big kind of issues I was kind of facing in a sense, right? And so my intention or plan though at the time, you know, of that stuff was not like an end game from a real estate standpoint, which is really kind of where I'm at right now. And it's really spicy, because I was able to have, you know, that brief conversation with him yesterday for a little bit, one today. This guy, you know, taking me on for the 50-50 split and a whole bunch of other stuff. You know, this guy was a big ass dude too. That's the other thing. I mean, just weird shit. I ain't gonna dive into shit. You're just gonna see. Just know this, right? There's a bunch of probably key things that I think have been really important, that have been kind of a realization to me, you know, finishing up this long ass video. Don't be too hard on yourself. Get the fuck out your own way in your head. You need to be accountable to yourself. You need to be consistent and persistent. You need to take your lumps and your failures as, you know, lessons. Remain the student always. And find some freaking people that are where you want to be at, right? Because there's people that make money doing everything. You know, this online shit, if I could go back and, you know, tell old me this, I would save a whole bunch of time, right? There's just so much opportunity right out there right now. There is really no excuse to, if you can't supplement, you know, 150, 200 bucks online, you know, watching some videos, learning some stuff for a little bit, doing a little trial and error, going to some garage sales, selling some stuff, selling your own shit, then I don't know what to tell you, right? Because once you start doing a lot of this other little stuff, it's the same kind of processes, a little bit bigger. That's all it really is, right? So about to go home, sort all these hats. If you didn't catch my other video, I have one hat in there that's going to pay for half the entire collection. So already doing really well there, let alone all the other scripts and sports specialties, Louisville, K-Brands, you know, all the good stuff, USA, snapback, trucker, patch, all the good stuff they say. So I'm gonna go back, sort this, finish some more of this shit. I got a lot more selling to go because I gotta get ready for Dallas next week. I still got a lot more stuff to finish writing. So get out there. Been up since about, I think, 4 or so in the morning, getting to it. See you guys in the next video. I'm home. Peace.